lights, colorblind. They colorblind. They colorblind because it's made of annual everything, and that's sort of colorblind. Colorblind is a feel is not good practice. Click-wise, it's a little bit more difficult to create negative feel on colorblind. It just is. And now people of the evolution of all those plus. And it's around the world, and of course they colorblind for the plus, first color, especially the color. And for us, first of all, that's what we do is to still learn almost a 50 go ahead and give us a little bit of that feature. A little bit of that feeling color that's close about to show. Okay, well, so I think I guess. So this is never again. Finish the sets that the movies of a Sanhedrin are organized. Sanhedrin, no, I guess. Sanhedrin, no, I guess. And then to start and for stars. You want to learn and know this. So how do you know that when you keep that respect for the sake? I'm not even teaching us. So Sanhedrin, I guess, not. Because Sanhedrin operates compared to stars as well as for stars. I think not under the shadow. So that's the case that the Sanhedrin operates more connected to start and the push balance. So why does the code of framing, or why does it also the Sharaka in the case? Which makes it sound like that the Sanhedrin operates in the show itself. So that's why this is what's the Sharaka, Akavosha, Fati, even the Johnson Park, or the whole thing of the year. And then it's Israel, was the way it works like this. Although you have the Sanhedrin, like all the high courts, they actually English kind of does the chamber of all of these language. We also have fucking gift in every province and in every city. Like a province is made up of multiple cities. So you have like a regional provincial things in Sanhedrin, and then you have smaller Sanhedrin and smaller provinces in each city. That's where it's strong. But close guys, as I mentioned, the whole plot, yeah, I mentioned the whole year. In close guys, you had traditional fucking game, but now you fucking game in every single city. So as I said, I'm going to point out to this very interesting, but I'm not pointing out the other one. This is about the game going, and you'll make some attention. How did you guys up with that? These men, shake them, and the contract there is right, and the contract pursuits of ours. So it's very interesting. When the Sanhedrin operates in Eretz Yisrael, Sanhedrin is here, and the Sanhedrin adjudicates capital cases in Eretz Yisrael. You can adjudicate capital cases in the Chutz La'aretz as well. With the caveat, Rosh Hashanah Sanhedrin sneaking La'aretz, Rosh Hashanah Sanhedrin La'aretz, La'aretz, Rosh Hashanah. So what this means is as follows. When there is proper operation of Sanhedrin in Eretz Yisrael, that is adjudicating capital cases. Now that requires two things. Number one, Simcha, and number two, if the Sanhedrin is situated in the Mishkas HaDrashis, in the Urim HaMikdash. If you have those two criteria, then the Sanhedrin is able to adjudicate capital cases. When the Sanhedrin adjudicates capital cases in Eretz Yisrael, it empowers Sanhedrin outside of Eretz Yisrael to adjudicate capital cases as well. That's really nice to people in this. Incredible. Okay, let's go back there. Then once I have large part of this was quite intriguing. But again, so as you know that, yes. So we have two different versions of this, right? The first version, like I said, is that if you go back and execute once every 7 years, is considered to be a destroyer. Right? The Muslim Ben Azariah said, once every 70 years, that the calculating of the people, if we sent on the Sanhedrin, it would never execute anyone. Due to your point. You should have shown that the Kabbalist or you know all of Arab. So we'll say so what's his name? So let's go to the chapter. Let's this moment. That once every 7 years is looked at. But again, if it wasn't as I said, once every 7 years is too much. But once every 7 years, that's normal. Or even once every 7 years is too much. First the word says, take it, okay? But talking about the people over the like this versus remember again, it's expressive, it's less exchange. So we definitely keep said, if you send us a hadith, it would execute when the things we exaggerate everyone. So I remember you have children says that's very nice, but then you have proliferation of workers. I think it gives us a lawlessness in versus don't be a lot. So first of all, side away. How exactly would that be and calculate the confidence sense? But if you really have one confidence that if they sat on the same page here, it would accelerate everyone. Okay, how exactly would you do that? And if you have all these testing, so you might just, so if you have you have your program, you also have the turbine, listen to this. You said straightforward, hard, right? You said straightforward, shallow hard. So listen to this. That's the following question. That's not a question, right? So, did you kill, was it right? So, it's so the keeper and the cover, they were on these days like this. This is a shot, it's a missile reading, question. So, you can tell me, do you know what's a healthy person or what's a trade for? What's his name? Let's say Shimon was a trade. Let's say the question, but imagine you're going to do demands like this. Right? Let's say Shimon was a trade. Let's say it's a trade. Trade that has a patient for which he's going to go to die. Now, okay, if you kill someone like that, technically speaking, is not liable to that penalty. Now, we'll have to define the skill like that. Just a little bit more, but we're saying, so, can you witnesses? So, look at those people. You know what you're talking about? Başım sayfa, ya basarım taşmos. Bunu esnemiyorum çok. Hepsini bekliyorlar. Bekliyorlar. So here we get into that. That seems to be grounds for exoneration. That's some prevention. And things on the shot power. And if you want to say, let's take a look at this and say, no, we know that children is told health. How do you know? They won't have to be shillings, the general practitioners, right? I don't know if this HIPAA apply after the patient dies. I don't know if it's the Bible applies. Right, but the ones that go ahead, they said, you know what, you're a general practitioner, and you just came for its physical victim before, you gave the people to go, so that he's 100% healthy. I do not the medical side, not the other, there's the baby maybe ready, the face for moving on the head extraction, and he had a Chinese heart rate, and he would be that, an MRI or a CAT scan or whatever else, maybe a very cognitive difficulty. He has some other difficulties that you didn't know about. He says, okay, that's higher. So that is capital piece. So essentially, what accusation is capital piece. If you wanted to exonerate, the way you would exonerate would be to say to the witnesses, how would you know with certainty that you would have you saw the question? Fine, we're not going to dispute that. Maybe Shimon was a trade for. This is a trade for. So that would be grounds for exoneration. Now, the counter to that is the Chazaka is that what? People are traitors. Right? We're trying to see the document that is a counter. What if it's exploited a particular question? And essentially, we'll cast doubt on the fact that we shouldn't be liable for being shitted if there's a possibility that shit essentially is only like calamity death. There's a trick on it. Okay, so that works. Let's say this is a murder. What about accused of immorality? Like, let's say you show up and they say that we saw living in this place. Like, we saw living our relationship with shit's wife. So how is that going to keep up and let you have an accelerate in that case? So the Gemara says, the more to ever is the other. So you're going to say like this, this is, if you see the actual act of the love, but literally again, if you really treasure it as two people apple, if you actually see the love, right? Everyone's like, you got to be treating like a close and personal, right? To actually see that, right? And so in other words, what you're saying is, you might see a lot of stuff that you might like adultery, but did you see the act itself? Now the push goes, the answer to that 9 out of 10 times is going to be no. So the Gemara says, but Rabbanon, everybody, so that's how they would have exonerated everyone. So it's like in the case of murder, essentially the way to exonerate was to say, how do you know that Shimon was a healthy person? If it's a trait that, on the case of our rights, they would say, did you really see the actual act itself? And the answer is that if you go as well, that would be done for exoneration. Usually doesn't matter. That's actually very interesting. Specifically now, again, in the case of murder, so the reason we reject that right effectively, because as we said, the first argument is that a person is not a trade law, unless a person will like are a trade law. But that's the case of the law. And we're saying, is that that you should say, what? We don't see the actual act of PR, maybe it can convict, how do you ever convict someone of immorality? But I think that you should show up, and they're not, she needed it nothing. Looks like as again, that's the one about the Rothschild, about Elias in general. Even when I'm out to see the act, what the album you see, like circumstantial evidence that indicates to us that women saw acting around in the church. Again, rarely are we ever going to see actual act, right? On actual lives. Well, what are we going to see? We're going to see a very certain way that really indicates to us that prohibiting sexual activity. There was another, as you know, what we do is more now. There's actually put this out now, I got to check out that today. And there's a group of people that actually learn that we set so far. Vulnerability, people have to have over so they're fully of black, they're fully of black, they're set so far. So they're not supposed to be able to set so far as every day. I know we just started about this, but it's still time for so far. Always time for so far, right? I know it doesn't get out right, you understand everything that I mean. So that's actually kind of what the results are. That's what stuff is all about, right? So if you get behind it, because so far, our witnesses seeing a man and a woman, right? Only was this whole one about a certain man, and meaning a certain way. Now, they don't see PR, don't see the actually meaning of that means all they see is seclusion. And that's why I think it's interesting how that triggers all the concepts, but in general, when witnesses are showing up and they say, maybe they have adultery, she was one. So again, but I believe that Shmuel says that I love the Raisa, where they ever say so has to do that. That's not what they're saying. But what they're saying is we saw enough to really just tell us that there was from each sexual activity that happened with it. It wasn't that's how we passed it. I don't know. It wasn't nothing. That's what I first time I came out this. My first time I came out this. Incredible. What a feeling. All right. Right there. So much is over. But anyone what they're doing. Now, right? No, I'm going to take a little break. They hard on the first things you know, that's actually that's a what we talk tonight. And then I said, what's it now? Now we're going to focus a little bit on the actual student effect. Yeah, he's probably the most well-known circular sentence about this, which is the halachas of the enigma of what to go. So remember again, just a little bit of brief background. A correct reading kills Shimon accidentally. And then the final chapter with all of these terms. Even kill Shimon accidentally. Now that means that even is set. That is his very refuge. You see the refuge. A lot of people in the refuge, all the details, such like this. That's what we're going to do. So you go. So since now we're going to focus this on what kinds of things actually results or in a, I'm going to listen really carefully. It's like here it is. Obligation, punishment, or opportunities regardless, right? Or just right now, what kind of act results in obligation for the killer to go to Dallas? These are the kinds of people who are sent into Dallas. Only the official struggle, like even killed Shin by accident. By accident, so we'll say, what types of accidents result in Dallas? I neither and not belongs to me. So we'll say, neither like as a student. We used to have plaster roofs, right? So how would you plaster your roofs? You take plaster, and what do? You roll it, right? You roll the plaster. So he's taking so Ruben is taking his roller and he's rolling out the plaster. Enough for our behind ourselves. And he drops the roller because we discussed the counter. He drops the roller. The roller falls on Shimon and kills Shimon. Okay? That's the Lord. How you shot on the compass. Or what happens? Ruben was rolling in battle. Right? And what happens? Enough for our behind ourselves. He lost over the rope, right? To the ball. He looked, snapped, something happened. Down on Shimon and kill Shimon. Or you know the student, Shimon is coming down on the ladder. Enough how to slip up the long rope, falls on Shimon. In all of these cases, only the sad go left. In all of these cases, ultimately, Ruben is sent to those. It was like common denominator in all of these cases. Ruben was coming in downward motion, right? You can't say the moment that wasn't just you. What I'm talking about is she's moving down, right? He's moving down, and if the moment slips out of his hand, he goes down, the motion goes down. He's involved in the battle. The rope snaps, something happens, the barrel falls down. He's coming down on the ladder. Now, actually, in all these cases, the downward motion, this is what really is going to be subject to dollars. How about in other motions, but not living up on that? So I think that Ruben was going at a possibility, but he was pulling the roller up, right, in upward motion, and then once the grip on the roller, right, and kitchen, or going the opposite is like a kind of board, he was hoisting up the barrel. and the rope snapped and the barrel fell down, or so on the base, and the hold of the steamer, but not or moving was going up the ladder, and ultimately again, and he fell down on sugar. Hallelujah, amen, most of all of these cases, moving is not scepticalist. Why not? Why not? Because in these cases, that occurred through upward motion. So let's say, now you don't understand why this is why there's just the same process in the tomorrow. The way that you must help us to get Kosher that you got some, you go left, the Shemova that you got some, you go left. So you do a product. And it controls shitting. Because of some type of downward motion activity, ultimately again, it's called most of us. Anytime ultimately again, it's not the character you got some, it's not the downward, but rather again, it's an upward motion, it doesn't go at all. So I don't say again. And this is the type of how you skills. It's a very beautiful word. It's like, close to character you got some. Looks like what happens. What happens if I look at the nice stuff? Person's experiencing in things aren't going well. Things aren't going well. My life is not going in the direction I wanted to go. Right? I'm together for you yourself. What should you do? Know that. What is going on? Change the circumstances. There are a lot of times in life when we're not having a good spot, what we did is we didn't touch water. So this problem would just stay there. Meanwhile, the mission says that you're together for you. That's what happens for all of us. Change the circumstances. Now again, maybe you can change all of your circumstances, but there are always circumstances that are in our sphere of influence. So you're not in a good spot in life with the bad news yourself, go back. Change your spot, change your place, change whatever circumstances you have, and turn your situation at least begin to change the situation around. You kind of go, all right, same thing, you're not here. So I say, where do I know this from? Where do I know this from, right? In other words, it's usually this down, but if we don't close the shit in downward motion, so we're going to say to us, and if we close the shit in upward motion, he's not set to us. So as I say, you must be where this from. The upper claw, that you call it like the Pasuk says, the Pasuk says, also combination that was brought from the rose, by not now, I love, by us. So as I say, it's actually pretty explicit. But also the Pasuk, that not tell our love, right? When the Torah describes the accidental killer, like the consequence of time is overcome the evidence show you in this book. From the knows, by Yakel Alot, the Fayamos, and people only back to stress. So the verse speaks about again the accidental killer, the Russian reason by Yakel Alot. So what you see from here, there are lots of amazing the spirit of struggles is always visited upon someone who kills someone else in a down and nerve emotion. So almost like it's not a logic thing, it's a hustle thing. This is also so now we're going to unpack this in let's say, so if I would keep gathering through what you want, so you can see by the way you know of the emotions you have with Sukkot. So if you just think about look at the Sukkot I'm talking about, this is the Sukkot that the blood. So it's these Makans are in the blood. You can't look for yourself, you see Sukkot, you have to do well. وزي ذاك الشخصية النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم اشتمل الوصية ما كنا بنشتغل بالنسبة لنا نسأل السلطة سير الشيخ على ما إلى من يطلق الرئيس الشمال ما كنا بنشتغل سأقول لك those somebody kills accidentally. You're talking about Ishkala, you didn't want to do Ishkala, but when is it? This comes to exclude someone that kills the actually. We also will talk about this, that even if it's cities of refuge, we set up for people who killed accidentally. Not for people who killed intentionally. That's the if you're an intentional killer, but you're an intentional kill Shuri and decides to rest with your blood, what do? You get it out. You talk about this. You put it out and you send child and police. So the three guys, you don't go chilling out event, but we must stop it. This exclusivity joke right here from the chilling event. You must say that's obvious. So you must say it's part of the stop it. So you must say mix it. So that by trouble. Listen, the obviously, if there's intention, then he's an empty. If he's amazing, then he's going to liable for that penalty. Allah, Rabbi, I'm a partner over in water. You understand what I'm saying? So I can look to exclude. says holy water. Now what's holy water? So he says that it's for moving to Shimon. However, you go ahead and say, what's going on? He says, I thought it was water. So also, this is what happens when you go very attention each year. I thought it was water. The Irish were talking about just the case, but who they actually thought that what it was water. But interestingly enough, what they might say is this. Even though Ruben will not be executed, right? The case where someone thinks that what he did was water, he won't execute him under those circumstances, but at the same time, what? At the same time, he doesn't go regardless. Right? He's not set to exile. You don't get the refund in case of overwater. Only a body of the overwater. Obviously, once that way, he says, water, if you guys stay with the circle, you're going to get all this. I'm going to shine you there, all the water cause of what you're going to see. I have the overwater, so we're going to go shine again. That's the water. That's what we call color brilliancy. So it's like, it's not showgate, it's not showgate. Like, why isn't it showgate? Why isn't it accidental? Why? Because there was intentionality. It's not lazy because he didn't have in mind to do something wrong. He thought it was water. So as I support the water on what it isn't showing, it's color when you resist, right? It's close to music, but not music. So support executing, but at the same time, it also doesn't go regardless. So the three guys, without intention, find on the established. This is something like how other guys obviously was established. She could like another. How do you say that? They should go to the destination. They don't look like that. He's liable to listen. He's listen. Is one of that's the case. God, in the staggering value of this, at the end of the heart of this side. Interesting. What about all the types of what's like this? Moving, had intention to kill, had intention was hunting, had intention to kill a deer, but instead he killed Shimon. Or a Kusi, or so. Or your intention to kill a Kusi, which you get not good, but also not liable to that penalty. And he ends up killing and destroying. And you found the hard thing, Hayama. He has intention to kill the adult, that's an unviable child, but instead he kills the regular person. So all of these cases, this is not, you don't go to Dallas. Why don't you go to Dallas? Why not? Because he wasn't accidental, like there was intentionality for an act of bloodshed. It was supposed to be quote unquote a permitted act, it turned out to be a prohibited act. So again, because there isn't some level of intentionality, you can't go, obviously, you're not going to execute for that. But you can also can't go to Dallas because there was some level of intentionality. You can have one in the outside. Right, you can have these cells, but the plan is others. This is the case of a quarter. And what's the piece of that's the very hard scenario. Moving is more than a knife, an outstretched knife. But why? I don't know. Like, it's mother always talking about decisions, right? It's having some mother issues, right? So you decide you go back to the body and nothing around outstretched scissors. That's what he's doing. And so the next stuff, so that sense of, she's working on that. What happens? He comes around the corner, Shimon comes around the corner, and he ends up killing Shimon. Now again, he didn't have intention to kill Shimon, right? He was just holding an outstretched knife. That's what's happened. So he would say, so the Mesa, in this case over here, he's not going to go to Dallas, right? Why would he go to Dallas? Because at the end of the day, she was someone, whatever other person. He can't say that this is really accidental. On the other hand, of course, he's not going to be executed because he didn't have no Shimon. The law is without that massive, but is so big. This comes to exclude all of the enemy enemies. So as we talk about this, that when I say that there's some pre-existing beef, between ultimately again and moving and shooting to see if that but moving will not go to Dallas. At the house, she's not over people. Oh, she's our love. Ultimately, it's talking about the case with the moving killed Shimon by discipleship, or by taking by against him, or that moving was thrown upon Shimon and told him myself, talking about that as well. The Harvey Yuga, so that's always the top love. The Harvey Yuga should sort of how we love. This comes to exclude the case, and we talk about this moment of going down, Yuga, for the purpose of going up. But Lord CPR, without intention, or I should say, the Lord CPR without intention to kill, probably miscounted. It's that side after. It comes to split these also. Imagine for a moment he comes to the left. And his intention was to go to the left. I went to the right and it ended up killing Shimon. So we can begin to see Rabbi Shalom Sada, he did not have intention. Talking to Scotty with your Chinese are it comes to two things. The intention to throw for 2 hours, and instead it went for 4 hours. So we begin to see what's the thing over here. when does unit go to goals? Essentially, when you're physical acting, right, you do not have any mind at all, which you need to see any situation where women have some level of intentionality. Some level of intentionality. Even if it was intentionality to an animal that killed the person. If you all have 2 hours and it went 4 hours, right? You're not at the corner, the other one's on the other corner. If there's some level of intentionality, that of course does not belong to the level of intentionality to make your entire use of. But you do communicate according to Golos. Golos is only exile spirit of love is only for someone who is a full, a complete shoulder. If there's any level, even a little bit of someone with any similar intentionality, you don't notice. This is the reason of details that you're going to continue to kind of flesh up as we go forward. It's just what we work on the stuff. So we're just very hard. So with the idea it's interesting, in the way that the Torah freezes this, is where all of this happening in the forest. Joseph says, there's not a case, but I have a case of accidental deaths. Is where moving is going ahead and chopping wood in the forest, and what happens? So they will see somehow there's a killing shooting, whether it's because the axe head bolts flies off or because the spoon or wood flies off. But the kind of manatees is what's happening in the forest. So it was a wide forest by forest. So it was a 9 yards, just the result of the mass of the creation. Which is the reason for the last declaration. Because the forest is a place where both parties have the right to be there. So therefore, Allah said just as the forest again, both living and shade of the there. So it's again the only time it is a few dollars is when both parties have the right to be there. For example, if shade comes into the property of the house and it happens to shade, so the thing happens to no right for that. Right? And conversely, if you live on the shade's property, also that's not fully accidental. In order for it to be accidental death, a number of factors have to be in place. The one we established zero intentionality. Right? And number 2, it has to be an area where it's both carbons are committed to be. Next. Finally, I've already opened up for this. So now this is an interesting piece here. On the over the support, the Nishmat Hashvila the Kaftab, the Metal of a Hargo, nothing. Those are like this. That's what you do in Korea, however. So what happens? The road buckles something different, and therefore it falls down onto the sugar. Now let's say some words as remember, what is down in this case? Now let's say what's unique about this case? Let's think about this case. On one hand, which direction is moving going up? And yet how does he sort of force down? So Shira is also moving force down on sugar. So what is his force? What is his initial? So if you can feel sugar in upward motion, no gas. Downward motion, there is gas. So what do you do in a case like this, where on one hand, his intention is to go up, and he's going up the ladder, but it's a downward motion that causes the breakage of the lung that caused him to come down on the sugar. So what do you do? It's like, we have the United case on the ladder, go to Douglas as well. Let's have the United case. When he's coming down the ladder, he slips off and he falls down sugar. In this case, he's going up, so it's down. But at the same time, there was a downward force that broke the lung that caused him to fall down. So is that called Aliyah or Yida? So the Gemara says, no, it's not. Now, Aliyah. Is this called ascension? Is this called Aliyah? And therefore, moving will not go to dollars, or you're leaving. Or is this called going down? And therefore, we're going to go to dollars. Anyway, we read that she is Aliyah. So again, it says, okay, you've touched on this already. This is the case of the Gita of Torah Aliyah. So this is the case of going down. This is going up. Rashi says, Arinadata can be read this Aliyah. So how that you with L is Gita. So that's his words. And just so we've spoken about this before, as a kind in this kind of case. Since the breakage of the wrong happens with downward force. This is called the Vita, this is called the descent, this is called going down, and therefore I want all my songs to be tired now. Whether that's not for the we'll have to see. That's what wants to suggest right now. That's not finished. Basically, it says, this is the word. Culture that we got to go on, show that we got to hold that, you like finish this, and anything, anytime to kill someone in a daily devotion, goes to Dallas. not the downward motion, doesn't go to bonus. So you might say, the guy who does the last year, right? So the same going down, what does this come to? Love last year, he had that note. Doesn't come to this case. Other than going up the ladder, even going up the ladder, but again, it's the pressure exerted downward that causes the right to break. And we see ultimately a low sky. Which was a low, my love last week, I got it. What happened? Also, the does last week, right? What is causing that he doesn't come to me? Was that my last year cuts up. It comes to include the butcher. And I say, what's the butcher case? So that's the butcher. The butcher is chopping me, thank you. And what happens? She comes down with the leg, but since it's coming down, the next cuts out of his hand and goes trimming. You carry for that. So there's not very less cuts up. Design what I was trying to say. Design them. Cut up shape cuts it. Listen to this. The butcher was cutting meat. Listen to this. Canafada, so there are essentially 4 different prices on there. Canafada, one price says, the product kind of after a potter. If the skill is in front of this kind of back of this potter, tiny enough, tiny enough for after a kind of potter. What if I saw it? And trying to kill the mass of this kind in front of this potter. Tiny enough, they were part of the after kind. Whether it was potter more of that in this kind. But tiny enough, they were part of the after a potter. And another one says that there's a potter rather potter. What is this? Look at this. That's not a contradiction. It's very simple. Can be the equals of the problem by a reach of the akala. So we'll say one much is talking about this. Now, you will say, for the butcher, it's 2 motions, right? Right? When the chop speak what it's doing, first, he goes up, and then it comes down. So again, can be used like on the basis that it's tired in front of him. That's something that we feels in the downward motion right in front of him. Now, you shall ask, and the verse is right, the doctor, right? The upper motion, not coming. Come down here, so so I know second right, so talking about a case of where the Arita isn't going to it, and you get back at him. Can be a weaker sort of the Shala Akala, both right, third right, so something like that. With the Arita is the front and the back, come down here, so the Shala Akala. Yes, I saw it. It's actually that simple. In the butcher cases, where is butcher going to be $5? When it shows with the downward motion of the knife. But if you chose with the upward motion of the knife, wherever that upward motion is taking place, ultimately that is going to be cotton. Incredible. So I need to go. So again, so we're still focused on our piece over here. Moving is going up the ladder, right? And when it presses down on the rung breaks and falls down. So that is what we call aliyah or yurida instead of aliyah. There is downward motion, but the downward motion is for the purpose of going up. So how do you look at that? Is that called ascent or is that called descent? Whatever it is enough means for it, right? So you have to finish with why. Because if it's ascent, he's not Taik. If it's descent, he is Taik. So which one is it? Which one is it? What's the last short? I don't think that's part of the short in the backdrop. So you do this going up the ladder, and ultimately again you run as he's going ahead and setting the order. So tiny kind of higher, the tiny is cutter, one price says is higher, one price says is cutter. So my love on the philosophy on the power base, the March 7 degree, and March 7 degrees. It's not business. I didn't say it's what is this? Is this called aliyah or yurida? Is it ascent or descent? No. No, not true. Everyone agrees on this. In this case, this is called aliyah. This is called going up. It's going up. If I make two about it, it has to be that way. Right? Why? Because if it's not that way, what? There's never a case of ascent, right? Or by definition, every ascent requires pressure downward. It's not going to say that any ascent, right? That always look at to call you got with someone aliyah or yeah. You just not aliyah. That when the city goes up the ladder and he breaks the run because he's pressing down with the that is called descent. In the race off, there's no case of ascent. The only way to ascend is by definition is to exert pressure downward. So the race has to be, and that's called the case of aliyah. And therefore, it's going to be able to go ahead and go up the ladder, break the run to ascending the ladder, fall down and shimmy and kill it. And he would not go to guts. That's called aliyah, not aliyah. It has to be that way. Little patches waiting to devices. It says, come and exactly come the goddess. When the Christ says that he's fighting, Taik doesn't mean goddess. What does Taik mean? Damages. Damages. Let's say you can go up a ladder and he breaks the rung as he's going up. He falls down on shit and he doesn't kill us. He injures him. Or how? Sky damages. They will say, it's an accident. It's an accident. Right? That's it. And seeking 101 is more global. A person is always liable for any damages he does, accidentally, it's a type of anything. The other place that says that he's talking, that's talking about the goddess. He likes another possibilities. Also, the goddess. Also talking about goddess. Lokasha, how to history, how to make this sources wasn't the other possibility is talking about as follows. There are multiple of myself. One is talking about a word-keeping ladder. So let's say the lung is treated by which means it has body. So let's say in that case where it's body, so that the most like there's a shimmer where to go and a step ahead with the brain, that would be called to the gut. That would be called the self. Why? Because since we're talking about a ladder that's not really capable of going ahead and holding this boat and sustaining this ascent, that's considered to be descent, and that we would be fighting in that kind of case. Interesting. Because actually it's one part of the street. Right? She says she does know and status. It's understood what every man is wrong. What's going to happen? It's very sad. It's very sad. Therefore, by definition, that is called a descent. So the service of the matter, the low is here in and the incredible. Or there's a possible caption for us. You might say, how about notice the or be talking about cases of ladders that are not even language, but the kind of shell of the public, of the local public. One is talking about a case where the rung was properly fastened in place, and one is where it wasn't properly fastened in place. You know what? If it was properly fastened in place, that's a proper ladder, and therefore you have also one start in one place as we descend, that's called ascent, and ultimately again is that high goes. If it wasn't properly fastened in place, so that's going to be called ascent, and even will be higher. So you know what's like? It sounds like what you are saying is like this. And halakha on myself, if we're going to go up the ladder, in a regular case, assuming that the ladder is a proper ladder, right? It's not worm, it's not lying, right? It's properly fixed. We're going to go up the ladder. And now what happens? As he's going up, he snaps the rung. Even though why is the rung being snapped? Why is it snapping? Because of the downward pressure, and we don't look at that as descent. Rather, in we view that ultimately again as ascent, and this all so we really would not go to boats in that situation. I wasn't under the asking, but let's see this. So that understands the local so say Eric, what I don't know in states how you all ever see about. Here it is. How you all see one finished Stiba, Hakasragwa, and not flooding itself. Ruben's went up the ladder, and what happens as he's going up, the Lord snaps suddenly, and as it snaps, he's falling down on Shimon and what's down on Potter and Hagavos. Ultimately, again, even these Potter from Davos. Now, why do they say? Because again, there are constants that the Yuta Mitsomet Aliyah is called Aliyah. Yetza, is called the ultimate again, downward motion for the sake of going up is called upward. Right? Aliyah is no, it's Yuta Mitsomet Aliyah. Right? Because again, what you're doing is pushing it down for the purpose of going up. Right? So Yuta Mitsomet Aliyah, it's shading downward pressure for the purpose of going up. It's not called Yuta, it's called Aliyah. And therefore, again, by definition, the Yuta is a saying. Now again, remember, it's a valid ladder, right? Like if it's like a construction ladder, then that's a different kind of case. But since it's a proper ladder, like even though again the movement's going up, using extremely downward pressure, that is called ascension. And if our local so even with what we kind of go this connect, the most of us is studios with that. The one is with there. Is called Aliyah. Those are, a lot of times in life, if you want to think that life is like this perpetual journey upwards. It's not like that. So, you have one of those experiences where things are so great spiritually, and then something happens, and like you are a little like thrown into this valley. It's so frustrating, it's so upsetting, and the person feels like all of my work, everything I did to build myself up is now gone because I looked at this deceptive habit. So that's what most people think we practice. When we descend, like when we have a Eureka, when we have a spiritual descent, it offers us an incredible opportunity to learn so much about ourselves, to learn so much about our weaknesses, that whenever things go say, whenever there's a bad spot in life, that teaches me, that shows me like my spiritual Achilles heel. If I use these moments of the Eureka to learn about myself, to learn about my weaknesses, and to build that better, build that better, and it turns out that Eureka is the soul of Hallelujah. That was the descent. Those spiritual descents made my ascent. And I was like, what's the halacha? When you read those with Surah Hallelujah, if you spiritually descent, you realize that to build yourself back better to ascend, and Hallelujah, with Surah Hallelujah is considered to be Hallelujah. And I'm saying that it turns out that even the descents in life, ultimately they are judged as an ascent. Even the Eureka's are considered to be Hallelujah. And the egos are used ultimately against our spiritual benefit. But I say it's one of those beautiful things to do. When we fail, our ability is not to wallow in it. When we fail, our ability is to ask ourselves, why did I fail? What happened? What can I learn about myself? What can I learn about my life? How through my weaknesses can I grow to become a better person? Within those moments of failure, I learn about myself, I build myself up to be stronger. And the failure itself, the Eureka itself becomes hard. The Eureka itself becomes an idea. The Eureka itself becomes a moment ultimately of spiritual ascension. If my egos are just yes, I'm good, then just because. But if the Eureka can speak to it and become the opportunity to learn about myself, to build myself back even stronger, and even the Eureka is an idea. And it ultimately again becomes a Eureka. So that I walk on myself, I step on myself, and get the Eureka, and so that I is called a descent. A descent for the sake of ascending, even a descent is part of the physical and the spiritual. You want to say? Let's go after. I can't get money over there. Yes. Always the most like good morning to let us like thank you. Of our responses for this morning's group of day. Our annual capital responses, the finished conference as well. I think doing all the show judges this year as his host for the stories that extra items. So our capital responses for the month of Singapore in October. Hi, Howard. Should have been listening to this as a factor is that the Esther hang on the foot of the grandson to Eva and Jeremiah is always up in the United States of the Anonymous public response to the schools of Stephen's all of our children. If you listen to the month of the English name of the problems, so and the Irish in the children, knowing our mother, Sarah, Grainer, Bats, Yoshua, Heschel, they call it rough. We thank all of our sponsors for the college of Racing, but the American Black Commodore, all three shows, like our families, and all of those new who are. That was again with cold that we saw from Sparky, as it should be our best teachers home. Showing them the proper allow any soldiers to be successful, the call not say anything. But so that let us be the lead of the week of the God ahead of us today. Today's God is evil. 3. We have our days, our 12 months after the bottom, my Rabbi. So it's a story that yesterday that we ended up with what the problems. We saw highlighted three unique things, qualities that apply to babies only that you see that have on the board. And this is the one of the things that we saw that if you still remember that we don't take kosher. Like remember again, if my ox goes out and kills someone, there is a unit that's called kosher, which means a problem. The problem is that even zoning do not take kosher. So then you might be doing a discussion about what is kosher. Is kosher kapara? Like is kosher only is in the Tommy payment? Is it normal? Is it a monetary payment? So we ultimately ended up with the fact that kosher is kapara. Right? Kosher is an atonement payment. There's my yes. Over here between Rabbanon and Rabbi Shmuel about how you found the Kedron. Rabbi Shmuel, you can use a shaker. Sorry, not a shaker. You go ahead and you value the business ultimately again based on the how you are with the damager, which makes sense because since it's a totally payment, therefore not unless it's something that is value. But the Rabbanon on the other hand, you can use a shaker. You go ahead and you value based on the value of damage party. So that's really good. So most enlightened Rabbi for us. One is it that let's say that it seems to be a totally contradiction. So that culture payment is a kapara, is an atonement payment, right? That's what it is. And logically, what should the value be? Start to value the time, the damager, right? If I'm the person whose ox killed Reuben, so it makes sense that I have to pay my worth. In other words, if something of mine comes to life of another, I should have to pay my value. That makes sense. But according to that one, you said to the value of the worth of the shot. So the smart sense about was Neymar, Hashot Salamato, and Neymar Hashot Salamato. So what you're saying is this is Hashot means to impose a payment upon someone. So it says Hashot with Mato, and again, Rashi points out to the year. Rashi points out that never Hashot Salamato, or the Malachis. He says, and which will be Isha, Horek Hashanashis Alabala Isha. Just two pieces. Just the one is, you have two minutes fight, but we don't go ahead and once it's into the once you go to this test, so the total experience of how much of it is, so the usual professor has to go ahead and put in this test. That what is it? It means a value. It's got to go ahead for that. The value of the district, right? It was not so it's not value, so we don't go ahead to pay that amount. So if you try to use the word hashasa, which means we impose a financial penalty or the penalty upon the perpetrator of the damage. So what's the hashasa mara? Mara hadon, it's not after the business. So let's say it says hashasa by the damage of the penalty. It says hashasa by comfort, just like hashasa by the penalty. Everyone agrees with the use of shit. We evaluate damages based on the value of the victim. So to again hashasa, so to increase the valuation of damages for valuation of cover, reduced by the value of the victim. Okay, so that you keep that their side of the Shmuel, and that's something you can actually see. Where the Shmuel goes again, the halacha based on cover is based on the value of the damager. He says in the text of the Torah says in Rasa, you have to give a redemption for your soul. Which sounds like it may you have to give your value. Damager's God. So it's the mercy of God in so that shows the essence of that word. What's that? What does it mean with this? What does it mean? That kofar ultimately again is kapara. Kofar ultimately again is an atonement. But nevertheless, how does it value that atonement? So that one, if you do not show Sibiu, Tushanian, even is a Shanian. Sure, it's a public thing. But how do you value that atonement? Ultimately based on the value of the damage. Something smokes this, but nowadays it's hard to have the five purposes. Five purposes. Ultimately, I want to that is specific to information. Number one, even someone don't take that part, don't take over. So, for example, the first case, even someone should be used in what that's the fight. The claim that we saw humans ox kill shit. Okay? It turns out, the second set witness who show up, you couldn't see that equal with us at that time that we told it. Don't use reciprocal punishment, no reciprocal punishment. Why not? Because we've established kofar, it's kapara, it's an atonement payment. So it doesn't make sense to oppose an atonement payment upon the our purpose. Now he wants to as an aside, there's another region that focus about how you evaluate the content that each one said. That's the master shelter. So we learn that we can just share it, or we can just share it. Also, that so that it's in front of you. And then that one whole lot of the section, if you can also take the photos of the value of the step. I hope this is still there. We're not into that too much right now, but our purpose, our purpose is that we use some of our focus is next. They, we find that every these issues are not solved as an everything. What is this? Remember, a lot of us is the case. Witnessing what it can show up. What do they say? You saw moving still from show. Now, if you does not have the money to do that. In general, if you steal and don't have the money to do that, much alcohol, you sold that. The identity, so they testify against Ruben that he stole. Ruben doesn't have the money to do that, which means under these circumstances, Ruben is sold as an identity. Now, it turns out that they don't focus on punishment, they're not sold as evidence. You want to several so Hamida said, what is this so honeybee? You have to say the video. That's ultimately a thing where Ruben himself had money. Ruben himself had money. Ruben himself was not had the soul as a slave. You know, the evil notice that, but not notice that. She says ultimately, again, Ruben himself wouldn't have himself to have money to pay back. Stole it out. So to again, so to you even when he sold his wealth. Okay, about the rest that would be there. This is so Amir wants to suggest that if Ruben doesn't have money, right, and if Ruben would have been sold, but after this thing would be done, even though he didn't have money, right? So if Ruben didn't have money, even did have money, he's done with it, even though sold. Wow. So what's that's tense. That's if we should catch like Ruben's focus because everybody sometimes will be sold. Now it turns out that he arguably sold the income sold. Income sold. So he versus 1 second. I really love us. But anyway, the odds have a lot. You have to use them. Why say this is hold up over here? If you had money, you wouldn't have been sold either. I mean, that is always done either. Why should we see the sold if you have money? In other words, come up with that stuff. Completely sold it. We're not going to put that yourself out. If you want to impose reciprocal punishment this time equally, so they go and change it. If they don't have money, they can be sold also. But eventually, if you have money, watch you to be able to buy these cell towns of certainty. Ella, versus right. And let's about him, the community as follows. And then you say, Tiny, if the slave only the day, only the day. But the way we say that people are not sold as that, who writes that? But someone in the equation has money. Like either Ruben himself, right? More than one person is right. If Ruben himself has money, that is really what he sold. If Ruben would never sold, he had some weaknesses, or even if Ruben doesn't have money, so Ruben would have sold. And then see for more to the whole 25 years ago, and now we do have money. So again, we're happy to have it. We're willing to pay. We're willing to pay. But again, if we have money to put yourself out of servitude, so if we have money, we should also be able to buy ourselves out of servitude. That's not what we're solved. This is about the last day, lonely be gay, but only be no, is that. What can I smile of this? But the leader says, but wait, even today, when we even have money, they want to have a cause, this is a soul. Incredible. Right? So the key is where no one has money. Right? Ruben doesn't have money. Ethan don't have money. No one has money, which means that Ruben would have been sold as an enemy. And if he just don't have money, he don't have money either. In that case, he would be sold into servitude. That's not how you know. Now, again, I'm going to love it. No, absolutely does. That's not that much. It is calculated to give us some more. He gave us a little piece of gold. I was just going to start through. The concept that we saw as an ability is a unique color of the spice to the beef himself. It doesn't apply to the cyclical punishment of the so we're saying that you need to see this beef and virtue, right? So as much as It could be forced. The value all of the fact, right? Or the accused of the supposed lateral fact. They don't mention it can't be so simply Kofa. Right? Kofa is an opposed. It is the thing that commentary. First, you committed crime. Right? The person committed an act. But if you didn't commit an act, then there's no such thing as an employment. Okay, so that's kind of a good. So I say that's the is yes. You show the 2 hours. Remember, you keep it added in. And you keep it added in. In the shower of the answers, you keep adding those points over here. In addition to the first 3, and the second so also can't pay or already need to pay based on your own intentions. Okay, so the case. My calculation on what's the root of logical? What's wrong with logic? Because I'm a philosophy. The philosophy is like the actual principle. Let's say the reciprocal value to the class. Again, there's one financial bills that people pay to take a further reduction. What are the people pay to take from the right? Which is actual like compensation comprises right things, or NAS, which is a penalty. And I didn't know these the NAS and Mamo is logical, NAS is illogical. Right? So from there, so that when I say illogical, it doesn't seem like anything to do with the actual value of the damage committed. It is so that it's a knas. It's a knas, it's a penalty. So the give us like this, there is a principle. Now when it comes to knas, ultimately again, you cannot pay knas based on your own position. Or, as we stated before, most of the knas partner. If you admit that you owe a penalty payment, you're partner. So therefore, it says that witnesses show up, right, to meet you. The witnesses say, we are the consumer, we're like, okay, have a nice day. But we're not going to impose reciprocal punishment upon it because it's knas, and make the knas contrast in comparable. So the Gemara says, I'm a Rabbi. Rabbi says, Sastika, Shara also myself, then I read in the Shaman. So the Gemara says, so Rabbi is so tired. Rabbi says, I'll tell you, I'll show you what's knas. I don't know what's knas. It can show that you're not actually doing nice. Like I said, that's what they do so many people. What they do, it was speech. It was speech. The speech people is not the right stuff. If you give it to the right stuff, if speaking, it can be executed. Somebody can be executed again. If you give it to someone, they say, we saw you in kill Shimon. Like on Friday. The Friday. And then it's like someone to show up and saying, you know, on Friday, he's going to dance on Friday. Even so, like that. So now she says, just if you want to understand how we learn to use over our knas, just look at the mechanics of it. And just look at the mechanics. At the end of the day, you didn't actually do it nicer yet, you can still be put to death. That shows that it's a knas. But I'm not going to think of Shemam Yadai and Yashami. Right? So Nachman comes along, and Nachman says, Ashur is knas as well. Look, they do something, for example, let's say this thing. You with a head, you didn't borrow $1,000 in Shimon, you didn't get that. It turns out, if you're consuming, you have to pay $1,000. Meanwhile, Ruben only have enough 2 days in it. Everything is testifying. Despite the fact that they do not actually because we didn't want something, that's the last spot. They have to pay. What does that show you? That it's knas. That's knas. So you must have a more. So you must have everything. And as I said, you have 7 more in your structure. The Rabbi and the Nachman are saying 2 different things. But the truth is, they simply saying the same stack. Which is, how do you know what people do as a knas? Because at the end of it, there was no nice that there was no action. Yet, a lot of them say it's the right way. It's not saying, my people, the law also my son, and the Rabbi. So again, from that, you're saying you should be a Rabbi, right? Rabbi said, if you told me to even do a nice, so you're going to be like that. And the Rabbi said, essentially, you can do a nice. So, because look, they didn't extract money from one party, yet it can still be viable. So Nachman finds saying the same thing as Rabbi. Think about it, you're right, the thing of Rabbi. But you're right, but Nachman's not clear to say anything new. And ultimately, again, Nachman is coming to add on to Rabbi's speech. So one says, this is incredibly important. It is the only reciprocal payment, it's a knas. It's a penalty. It's a penalty. Because it is a penalty, that's what I mean, keep it from what it says. That agent admits that they are agents. So when they come up with a nice they are not supposed to pay reciprocal payment. How do we know that even Zoe is a knas? Because they didn't do a nice they didn't do it. right? All they do is this proper speech, right? You offer up ethos, and yet at the end of the day, you're still liable. Okay, second, I'm going to go up. Let's say, second, I go up, I'm going to go up. Eight seven, the Shamas in Tonga, and then so that is very serious, right? And then so that, and so that for a senior release, which I think about, he pays his portion, what is it, he maximizes his stuff, it's not what is that in his name? You know, the high selling part of the selling part of the shop saying that it's actually in the office. So let's say, so I'm telling this, like, this is shop, right, with this one in this team, that moving those $1,000 for shipment, so they're making $1,000. Turns out, that you can be so quick. So what do you do? So I think that $4,000. How do we split it? With this one pays 500, we still be having, okay? That's we already learned that. Right? That's initially the charge from the Rabbi, the charge from the Malchus. We split money, but we don't split Malchus. Now, what's that? This is very interesting. What does that mean? When we're going to brag, is we're giving benefits. Definitely over there. This is sense things. It's going to be like this fascinating case. We just want to show out one of the things. We can saw eBay, we saw eBay, we decide. So we think it's hazard. So we think it's hazard. So what's how to do hazard? That's how I'm Marcus. So now it turns out they say to them, and they say, you can't see the do hazard. It's really us. Really us. Okay. So now we did Marcus to look to the equal zone. So let's say, so let's assume the one right. Marcus is giving so let's call it 40. I don't know. Okay, nobody's doing 40. So you would have like this. Right? Or I would have thought maybe when this one gets 20. What is it? It's not the way it works. Each of the indices gets a full measure of Marcus because we split monetary awards, a monetary debt, monetary plus, with that Marcus. Right? So if I say again, if they were going to give $5,000, each unit will be 500. But by Marcus, each one of these measure of Marcus. So it's one of the teaching us. I look at something very interesting. So I was going to Itsu Chavinayim. The Shari part of the day, what's exactly right? What is it? What God's state of me? That it eats and pays his share. It means like this. Let's say every one of the witnesses is going to be trouble. Let's say, for example, right through this 1 and 2 show up, and they say these Sundays steal $1,000 from Shane on Friday. Okay. The other set of witnesses show up, and they say, with this one, you cannot have seen anything with us. Now, the second set of witnesses will testify about with this one. That's not how it's true. So it sounds like what they can do is they can witness one incomplete story. I cannot take his portion. In other words, you won't have to pay the $4,000. But pay 500 is that quote unquote what's his portion of the interest. You might for a second. Well, in the shower, does that actually work? One time in the word, if you the shower will actually fail. That's not really the work for us, right? By the simple punishment, the way to like either is the entire testimonial unit is made into English government or none of them might be so. In other words, you can't make one witness of the unit which would be so big. Doesn't work. On the level, notice like, that, it goes to check and reality. So that's investigates. The case is there, one of the witnesses shows up and it's almost like that sinking, the defendant is 42, claiming that he gets some of that law, so trying to deny the $1,000. Then one of the witnesses gets from Saudi. I wanted to trip on so much more to a piece that makes its owners change. Think of that calling and I lied. I'm not going to lie, I can tell the truth. And therefore, getting to get more and it sounds like Rabbi said, okay, then we can pay this share of $500. That doesn't work. So the money says, culmination, eventually we should have a closer value. Once that's not going to work for testimony. The testimony really works is once you give your testimony, that's it. You are not believed to change your story. So what's really interesting is once you offer up your testimony to wisdom, that's it. It's locked in. You do not need to change it. So how can you just come down and say, I lied, and therefore then you lie on perhaps $1,000? Because hello, by the way, you just made me share all that. So I know because I'm going to go through it. We might listen to this. What's the case? The case is where the witness one shows up and says, you know what? Witness, me and witness two, we testified in different against me. We were made into Egypt's zone. Made into Egypt's zone. But then he escaped from that things in. So I'm here now in this case, number two, to declare that I am an Egypt's zone. And therefore, again, I'm going to pay my portion. So my says, well, that's what Gemara says to Rabbi and Rabbi Akiva. Because obviously doesn't look like Rabbi Akiva. He just thinks Rabbi Akiva on the bottom of the heart of the relates. Why? He Rabbi Akiva, I'm not going to try to be asphalt. Maybe here was Rabbi Akiva, but what's that what? You can't pay as a piece in it based on your own mission. Why not? Why not? Why not? It's always success. And then you can't be risk based on your own mission. So what's the case? So that just to be clear, we're just trying to figure out, but we send him a route that if each Zohar can pay his own portion, that he's showing with his alcohol, based on his own mission, to divide it to his share. We're just trying to figure out what is that case? What is that case? So we must listen to this. I will go over that. So obviously, the examining the way, the idea that you don't know all six strengths. So what's the case? The case is right here. When this one shows up, in case 2, okay? We just want to case 2. And what is this one saying is that these listen, case 2. And witness 2 and I testified in case 1. And you were found to be inexorable, and this is being imposed the financial penalty upon us. So lost $2,000. Let's say something interesting happens here. Even though we say that reciprocal payment, right, is just once they've been passes the something, right, the verdict, once the verdict is delivered, and now basically saying witness 1 and 2 is $5,000, that says that is now a debt. Because it's a debt, therefore what? It's money. It's money. It's not yes. And it's any other debt. That's in other words, when after the verdict is delivered, the witnesses 1 and 2 are even voted, and they're obligated to do that for $1,000. So that even though the process of even voting is yes, all things they vote is further, that is now trouble. That is a debt that they owe. If it's a debt, then you can't do it based on your own admission. So when witness 1 shows up and lays these, right, and says, listen, witness 2 and I realize we can exonerate in case 1, and case 1 delivered the verdict. And we're fighting it through every second. They go up the verdict, we're fighting $1,000 as a financial obligation. Therefore, when witness 1 should have a reason to accept, I owe it, we put it in, and we let him pay his portion of $500 to him. So you might say, okay. So you just think of that kind of thing, but talking about what's in the pipeline. He's not a most of fascinated about this. Who's hiding in this case? Who's hiding in this case? Witness 1. Who's not hiding in this case? Witness 2. Why? Because witness 2. The same thing. Witness 2 is going to so I might have thought that how can I obligate witness 1 to pay his share without obligating witness 2? I'm not sure how we do. Witness 1 is being on the CEO's money. So, almost like when someone comes forward and says, take their own money, what's up? Vote for that? What's up, vote? Okay. Fine, cash credit. You know, and that's all I'm possibly saying. Okay, we'll take you at your word, which is no words. That's it. The fact that there's another witness involved in what he's not saying anything, and your witness, your word, should have an impact over this number. Say, well, listen, this witness comes along with this one story and says, we're going to make you result of it. And the first state can actually deliver the verdict. So they made us cite as if that $1,000, and I expect before you engage the number 2 say that I owe my portion, basically 2 says, okay, they are, no problem, we're happy to accept the verdict. What's the implication of that over this number 2? Nothing. Because they say everything is saying that incredible. All right, so I say this stuff. Something's good and something's not incredible. And even under this story, which is this show, but not so it's supposed to be just a show. We just wanted to show up. They said, we just saw today the voice is white. Right? Friday, Shabbos, I can hear that he's saying this song the voice is white. And we do not pay the people. We give her to them. Okay. So let's say that what happens. Now we must say that we have to see it up. The house to do something. Okay? So second still to show up on the first day, but it just we cannot have. Instead of seeing it on Friday, you will not get in the house. Yes, you can go out and get a whole day like this. So you cannot have this question. What's it now? What's the question is, what does it take in this scenario? So again, try to make anything take the super. Let's say like just something with $50,000. You try to make it super. So here's the problem. Just say that you really have to take the $50,000 because it makes sense. Why? But hello, they know we must have someone who knows super. So that's it, guys. First of all, we'll say that one. But what if now we didn't pretend that we didn't see that anyway. Now I was going to get her to that. Too much work. Possibility one. Possibility one. Maybe divorce. Possibility two. God, it's has to do it. So the first way, smells like what the classic is in Singapore, right? It's a shop. He said, you would just want to $12,000 issue. So it's like an increase in liable for $1,000. Then you would not be liable to out their testimony. How open it is. So for $1,000. In this case, we try to eliminate super. So right now, you can juxtapose with super. But if you're about to look for super, or it goes like, there's something to say, scenario one is that rough off previously to the weekend. That's no CT at all. And therefore, big side testimony of $55,000. To second report. If we look at this, that's what we explained that. The possibility B is that he deceases her, in which case his estate would have to pay out. The chef is in this case, and next to the examiner, carrying to legal. Which the Mishnah says, only in Kama of the notes of legal, which must have shown since our only starship with Lisa, you're not sure about it. That's interesting. So there's a more values as is the super future. Now, it wasn't discussed before that people, a woman overnight is selling super. And so let's say the whole has money, so she decides to sell super. Now, what happens when she sells super? What is she selling? What is she selling? She's selling a future option. What she's saying is eventually we'll get $50,000. Now, we can sell it to you with the possibility that we're going to get divorced. Right? Or the husband's going to die. And if I'm correct. But remember, there's another possibility that she produces the same. She produces the same. One was the buyer rights, but that's right. So therefore, we can sell it to other professionals who sell it at a steep discount. Right? Because again, although there's the possibility to pay out, there is, right? Which we check into the seller by possibility first, right? There's a possibility to pay out, right? But what Ray said, there's also the possibility that you get absolutely nothing. So we must suggest that the amount that you need to be zoned. Now, was it interesting enough? It was this pizza seller. Someone says, by the way, how do we assess this food? Someone just stuff about. So this is ultimately again, you do it based on the based on the husband. What this means is like this. How do you assess for the ksuba? Everybody, what's mishuman? What's mishuman? What is the incumbent to the ksuba? But for the husband, what is the ksuba? Everything. So this is very important. The ksuba incumbent regardless of everything. The property look like we are saying ksuba, right? Even the Lula, that has spoiled. Even the shirt like that. It's everything is going to be ksuba. So we've got consistency. There's nothing value of the property, even the value of the property is converted to the ksuba. But the value of the property converted to ksuba. And now that we've done it again, that is what is even needed to try the husband of, and therefore that's what they have to pay. So if the value of the property is converted to the ksuba, now those are nice that they have to pay to the husband. But that's what Osha already know, the Isha. No, that's what Osha said. You look at what the Mishnah said. The halakha myself is very interesting. You look at the following. How much would a person be willing to pay for the future life of the Ksuba? Right? We subtract that amount from the actual value of the Ksuba, and that's the amount that the Ksuba would have to pay. Right? So I was going to say, the value of the Ksuba is going to be someone for $50,000. Then if she were to sell the Ksuba, how much could she sell it for? Let's call that $20,000. We look at those two values, and we zoom in on what's the difference in those two values. The face value minus the future value, that's the amount ultimately that they receive into the part of the husband dog. And if I love myself, you have to pay that. I'm going to talk about the Isha, or the Suba. So, if I love myself, we're going to go against some approach. That will be different between the face value and the future.